Hello, and thank you for joining us here at Finovate Fall in New York. I'm David Penn, Research Analyst with Finovate, and joining me is Bill Harris, CEO of Nirvana Money. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you.
It's great to have you here at Finovate, and I thought maybe for folks who don't know who you are, and don't know much about you, could you maybe start off telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do with Nirvana Money?
Sure. Well, I've been in financial technology for, 30 years. I've started 9 different financial technology and cybersecurity companies. And my most recent one is called Nirvana Money.
Right, absolutely. I was going to say, and as you said, this is not your first rodeo by a long shot. I wonder if you could tell us maybe a little bit about the vision and idea behind launching Nirvana Money after all these years.
It's simple. Customers' financial lives are not simple. We've created too many products from too many institutions with too many apps, with too many fees, and so particularly regular people, middle income people, their financial life is a mess. And so we're trying to do one product, one app that does everything you need for your daily money.
Yeah, it's really something else, and I think someone, given your experience of seeing all of the sort of proliferation of opportunities and apps and services and so forth.
Much of which are my own fault.
But definitely, having the capacity to realize that, wait a minute, maybe now we need to sort of bring some of that back in and make something that's a little bit more accessible and easier for people to handle all of this plethora of opportunities that are out there.
Less is more.
Absolutely. You've got, again, this great history of building companies. We've got a record number of young startups here at Finovate Fall this time around. I'm wondering, do you have any advice that you might give to sort of some of these young CEOs and startup founders?
Focus on the customer.
Focus on the customer.
If you're doing something that's seriously good for a specific set of customers, the wind's at your back.
Is this something you found that folks lose track of as they're building their businesses? They're thinking of other things and just not thinking
completely. Unfortunately, and it's not their fault, but unfortunately, most startups are always scrambling for their next round of funding. And so they have to get out something quick, and they have to get to market quick, and they have to prove traction. And as a result, they don't have time very often to think about, all right, what are we really doing for the customer?
It's really an interesting thing, given that so many of them initially start off with, that's the idea, I'm going to give this to these people, I'm going to bring it to the people, but then once they get involved in the business, it's almost like a distraction to all the other things that come up.
Yes, you got to pay the bills, you got to pay the employees, and you got to, listen, if you're a brand new company, it's not unusual you spend 1/3 of your time and your entire senior group begging for money.
Wow, that's a lot of time. Speaking of time, coming up in a little bit, you're going to be giving a presentation, a very provocatively titled presentation, Crypto is Useless, Why There's No Killer App. I have to admit, I'm sympathetic to your line of thinking, but could you give us a little preview of what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, it's simple. Crypto is useless. And by that I mean, there is no utility. There is nothing that crypto does that cannot be done better with other means. And frankly, I feel pretty much the same in most instances about blockchain.
Interesting. Blockchain is often sort of the last refuge for those who are trying to make some sort of case for crypto. What about the blockchain part of it?
What about the
blockchain?
blockchain?
You're not so sure just yet.
Here's what it is. It's a very clever cryptographic protocol, but it's a tremendously inefficient way to try to do anything. And there are much better ways. We know how to do secure cloud-based databases. We know how to do them efficiently and at scale. And the blockchain is the opposite.
Interesting. I wonder if that also sort of falls into that rubric that you're thinking about of maybe not focusing as much on the customer and thinking what exactly this is for?
Well, absolutely right. The way it has developed, and this wasn't so much in the beginning, but the way it has developed, the focus is nowhere near on the customer. It's how much money can I make? And whether I'm an investor or particularly if I'm a promoter, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I'm skeptical of any industry where the promoters are driving Lamborghinis.
There's one tell for you. So in terms of sort of a crypto winter people are talking about now, is that something that you thought would take place sooner or later?
Well, listen, I've been predicting crypto's demise for years. 5 years. And I have been spectacularly wrong, at least insofar as the market value. But I still believe the thesis. Why will it not ultimately be important? It simply has no utility. There's no use case except for money laundering and criminal activity where it is better than the alternatives.
Yeah, I've heard some really interesting conversations talking about, ironically, the support for cryptocurrencies actually increasing support for things like the US dollar, which has surprised a lot of folks.
I'm not sure how you would come up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, crypto is 1/10 of 1% of global payments, right? How it could affect anything on a macro basis is beyond me.
Wow, interesting. Well, thinking about something that's probably not too far beyond you is some thoughts about the future of our industry, crypto accepted. Where do you think fintech is headed? What is it that you see that excites you? What do you think that we might be seeing in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'm glad you said 3 to 5 years as opposed to next month. And most people are focused on next month.
Right.
But here's the thing. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We have been working on this stuff, and I say we, I mean the industry,
Right.
has been working on the digitization of finance for at least 20 years. I mean, I guess 30 years. I've been doing this for 30 years. And even so, after 30 years, we're still backwards. We're still, as an industry, not where we should be.
Wow.
And this is an industry that should be essentially completely virtual. I mean, if you, the two industries most profoundly changed by digital technology, media and finance. And media has, I mean, the tsunami has hit. All the old media is dead or dying. The new media is ascendant. That has not happened in the financial community, and there are a number of reasons for that.
Right.
But compare finance or media with e-commerce. You can order electronically, but you still need little brown trucks to deliver the stuff.
Right.
With finance, it can and should all be virtual, and when it is, it's cheaper, faster, and better.
Interesting, interesting. So would you say that you're optimistic about financial services and fintech being able to make those moves in the relatively near term?
Oh, well, okay. I was about to say, well, yes, they'll make it. When you said near term, no, I think this is a marathon.
Right.
I think 10 years from now, we will be in a substantially better position, but we're still going to have the hangover. Here's the thing. It is ironic what happened to this industry. Why are we so backwards today? In the 1970s and early 80s, when in the beginning of mainframe computing and glass houses and everything else, the financial community, banks in specific, were incredible innovators. They grabbed this stuff harder and faster than anybody. That was 50 years ago.
Right.
And now we are still, if you look into the heart of many of the big bank systems, those systems are they're COBOL systems, 30, 40, and 50 years old. And pulling them out is almost impossible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just one last question I just wanted to ask on that. It's a really interesting point that I don't think a lot of folks maybe aren't old enough to recall about some of the innovation that took place in the 70s
So now
and 80s.
you're saying I'm an old man.
Yeah, you don't have me by much. But what do you think it was that took place that took financial services from that place of innovation to that slowdown in, I guess you'd say, the late 80s, 90s?
Well, it didn't slow down then. I mean, it's really, they were still innovating in that period. But what in the 2000s, in the past 20 years, what has slowed them down? Two things. Number one, if you've got this technology and you can't pull it out, you're forever barnacleizing what you've got. You've got this cell, and now I'm putting this on and this on and this on in order to try to get a better customer experience.
Right.
The other reason is the simple fact of bigness. If you are a big organization, you are by virtue bureaucratic.
Right.
And, too many people trying to make responsible for the decisions, and you have difficulty being crisp and sticking with, putting all of your arrow behind a specific direction.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Well, fantastic having a conversation with you. Could spend all day talking with you about some of this stuff. It's very, very interesting to hear your incredible perspective that you bring to this. So I'm looking very much forward to hearing your presentation on the main stage. And again, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Right, and thank you for joining us as well.